Hey, Pat McCardle in the shop today where we're talking QS3 with Dane from Fox. Stay tuned for more. All right, so today we got the awesome Polaris XPEDITION in the shop where we're going to be talking all about shock technology and what goes on here. But before we do that, Dane, why don't you tell these folks who you are and what you're doing here?
I'm Dane Garvik. I'm marketing manager at Fox PVG, so our powered vehicle group, and we do all things with a motor. So OE aftermarket for Polaris, OE aftermarket truck, you name it. Whatever's in your garage, we make shocks for it.
Nice. So when we think about this QS3 technology, what does that actually stand for in Fox lingo?
Yeah, so QS3 stands for quick switch. So there are 3 adjustments on these shocks, and so we wouldn't make them brightly colored and labeled and easy to get to if we didn't want you to make some adjustments for how you intend to drive the vehicle. So quick switch 3 is what is featured here on the XPEDITION.
So when you think about like the Polaris XPEDITION 2-seater we got here today, if I'm tooling around by myself, I'm probably going all 4 corners to 1, right?
Correct.
And if you and I are out riding together and maybe I got a couple accessories on this thing, I'm gonna go up to 2. And if we got it fully loaded, we're taking gear for the weekend, we got, you know, full of family and friends, whether it's the 2-seater or 5-seat, that's when we're clicking all the way to 3, right?
Correct.
All right, well, let's get down here and show these guys just how easy this is. So as we look up under the wheel opening here in the front, you can see right now we're sitting at 2. And all we gotta do is turn that thing about 90 degrees, right? I mean, it arguably couldn't be simpler. And then if we want to go the other way, it's kind of the same deal, right? Just shy of 90 degrees the other direction. All right, we're going to go back to 2 to make sure we keep them all equal here.
Yep, yeah, when you're adjusting that, you want to make sure all 4 corners are being done at the same time because it's a pretty equally balanced vehicle. So again, you've got that same switch on all 4 corners and very easily, accessible. You can do it with the bed up, the bed down, reach into the wheel well there. But yeah, as you said, it's just 3 distinct clicks.
Simple. 1, 2, 3.
Yep. Right. And there's no way to damage the shock in that sense because, again, like I said, we wouldn't make them easily adjustable if we didn't want you to do that. So you have those 3 settings. The worst thing you can do is negatively affect your ride by your feelings. So if you're in 3 and it's just you by yourself, like, man, this feels a little more firm, you can switch that out. But you're not going to damage the shock by running it in 3 by yourself with no payload. And then if you run it with you and I in there with all the things in the bed and fully maxed on payload and we're on 1, it's just going to be pretty soft.
Nice. So. All right, well, hey, let's go grab a shock off of this vehicle along with a few parts and show these guys how everything works.
Absolutely.
All right, so Dan, sitting on the table here, we've actually got a shock off of this Polaris XPEDITION, right?
Yep.
And maybe for the viewers at home, can you kind of just walk us through like what each individual part is and a little bit about what they do?
Yeah, absolutely. So across all of our product categories, you're going to have an aluminum body shock, which is going to have a Type 3 hard anodization. So this is going to help with inclement climates such as this in Minnesota, where you have salt in the roads, things like that. But this just helps with having it less likely to corrode like a steel body shock and rust away. So this is a Type 3 ano. So this is an aluminum body. Inside of here is the main piston. You've got your bearing cap. And then this is going to be your body cap as well. So fluid is going to flow in and out of this piston inside of this main body, go through the bridge and down into my remote reservoir. It's either remote or in this sense, a piggyback because it's on the back of it. Inside of there, floating piston, an IFP. We have nitrogen and fluid. This IFP is like a little dam, little donut, and it maintains that pressure between both of those so that they never come in contact. And then in order to adjust some of that flow, there's your QS3. So we'll go into more detail as to what exactly that switch is doing, but that is helping to gate the fluid as it flows through the main piston into your piggyback reservoir.
Nice. All right, well, let's maybe start because this also has some technology on this particular shock inside this body, right? Where it's got almost a bore in it, right? That's grooved around.
Yep.
And what is that doing for us on this particular setup?
So that spiral groove is helping to kind of direct where that fluid's going. So again, that fluid is going to be going through a piston. So this is that broken down piston. So we have what's on top of this is going to be a shim stack. So you see those shims laid out. They're in various diameters, thicknesses, and sizes. And so as we stack those up in different orientations, that's going to help both on the rebound and the compression stroke of the shock dictate what that shock's going to do. These are all exclusive to the size of the vehicle, the weight of the vehicle, how you're going to be driving it. So again, a shim stack, a custom valving of that is going to dictate between a 2-seater, a 5-seater, something like a Ranger that's way heavier. That's what is going to help give us that platform is how we get the orientation and how many shims we have.
Yeah, so when you hear about people talking about, hey, I'm trying to retune my shock, by going to a shock shop or maybe a dealer, really what they're talking about is swapping out these shims for different diameters, thicknesses, and the number that gets stacked up on either side of that piston, right?
Correct, yeah, because what's happening is this is the piston with the wear band on the outside. So this wear band is sliding up and down the inside of this shock body, and that's on the outside of this piston. So this piston is directional. There's a top and a bottom. And so this shim stack sits on one of those sides as the compression or the other side as the rebound. And what's happening is that fluid is going through this piston, and if you're compressing, it's going to deflect and bend these out of the way. If I have a very heavy vehicle and light shims, I'm just going to be blowing through my suspension all the time. It's going to feel too soft. It doesn't matter how many switch clicks I do, it's just not going to help. So I need to have a set of shims that's going to dictate the shock's movement based on how heavy it is, based on how I'm going to drive it. So that's the differentiation between this could be on a 2,000 pound vehicle, this could be on a 10,000 pound vehicle. It could be the same length, but the differentiation inside is that valve.
Right. And I think one of the key things that people often forget about is, even though the shock bodies may look the same on the outside, when you're talking the difference between a 2-seat and 5-seat Polaris XPEDITION, the shim stack that's inside is very different between them, right? To be able to handle the extra weight.
Correct, yeah.
All right, so we talked about how that fluid, kind of goes through that piston to slow that thing going as it goes up and down. Now, when we get to the other side of the bridge and we get to this, QS3 selector, we've actually got one of those sitting on the bench here as well, right?
Yep.
And I think the cool thing here that you can kind of hopefully see in the cameras, there's a couple holes that are actually drilled in this. And if we're at one, you'll see that the bigger one is wide open, right? And the next one's a little closed. As we go to 2, it actually opens the next one. And if you go to 3, it basically closes them both, right?
Correct.
And then it's forcing kind of all the oil through this area.
Exactly.
So as we look at that, really what that's doing is working with that piston, right, in unison to kind of slow down how fast the oil can get over to this piggyback reservoir.
Correct, yeah. Because it's next to impossible to go and change this very quickly. So if you've ever seen any of our videos to where we're tuning trophy trucks or even tuning UTVs, you get the thing out of the vehicle, you put it in a vise, and you're breaking it apart and you're doing open heart surgery. That's a really big aspect. You can see there's a little bit smaller of a shim stack on top of this, but the theory is still there. So as you were saying, Pat, inside of here, when I'm all the way at 1, there's a larger diameter port that allows the fluid to go through. When I go to 2, it closes that port and then switches it to the smaller port, which is our second setting. And then when I go to 3, it now closes off both of those ports. Now this is a QS3, meaning I can quickly do that. But if I were to take that off, and this would be a DSC, a dual speed compression, I'd have to get out with a tool and I'd have to click rebound and compression, high speed and low speed. This is just the ability for me to do it quickly, reach out, do it fast, and have a noticeable difference without ripping the shock apart and rebuilding it and tuning it for how I want to drive it.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, we run into people, right, that because these are so easy to adjust, right, their buddies might be messing with them trail side and reach up and maybe, turn 1 or turn 2 and not all 4.
Yeah, I mean, when you rolled up on this thing, you're like, wow, these are all set at different settings. You're like, sure are, but it's easy enough to go in there and you have 3 settings. So it may seem daunting. Someone's like, I don't want to adjust my shock. I'm not a racer. I'm not a rock crawler. The amount of people that say that is pretty insane, but the amount of adjustability that you get is the perfect amount for, changing for what, like I said, what are your intentions with the vehicle? If you want to go out and it's riding really stiff, you may not be driving hard enough to get those shocks to do what they need to do. But if you want a noticeable change, let's make it quick. Let's do quick 3 adjustments so that you're not going all over the place and messing up the tune and you're like, oh, well, now it doesn't do anything.
All right, so what else? We got one more part here sitting on the table, right?
Yep, so this is the bearing cap. So when we look inside of this shock, this is a dust seal. This is just meant to keep everything inside. So this doesn't retain, oil or anything like that. This is inside. So this is inside the shock right here. There's a little bumper for when you do top out. So when a shock is fully extended, that's what we call top out.
Yep.
And when it's fully compressed, that's what we call bottom out. So there's 3 zones in which that shock is riding. You've got your catch zone when it's fully ready to catch a bump.
Yep.
You've got your ride zone, which is where we're sitting at right now.
Yep.
And then when this thing goes through a G out or has a lot of people in it, that's at our bottom out. So we'll have that bump stop here on the external part of the shock, on the shaft, to help alleviate that hit when we bottom out. And then that small bumper inside the shock is meant for when we top out if we leave the ground or we've fully drooped out those shocks.
Right, nice. So overall, when you look at this, you know, this Polaris XPEDITION shock, right? We got that nice QS3 technology that makes it super quick and easy for people to adjust.
Yep.
You can actually feel those detents. You can hear them a little bit.
Correct.
Inside, we've got that groove body, right? That allows us to get some progressive damping as that shock is being compressed. So it's not just a smooth bore on the inside like maybe some of our previous gen models had.
Yep.
And then as you get to, you know, kind of the piston and shim stack, that stuff's, I'll say, kind of pretty standard, right?
It is.
Other than, you know, this special wear rod or wear band that really makes it so that it can live within that groove body, right? Without wearing out prematurely.
Exactly, yeah. So shocks are moving. So with movement comes friction. With friction comes heat. So as we start to look at how we need to dissipate that, the diameter of the shock really helps with alleviating and eliminating all that heat. When we look at metallurgy, steel is great for retaining heat. We have that in our potbelly stoves, we have that in our Dutch ovens. We don't want that in our shocks. So we want it to be able to withstand heat but not retain it. So the aluminum body helps get that out of there. That spiral groove that's inside allows for more of that, like you said, progressive, which is more of kind of a ski jump style, rather than linear, which is being straight up. If it was a smooth bore, you get a little bit more of that just linear hit. So the internal technology is great amongst a multitude of our shocks, but what differentiates this shock from a Pro R or a Turbo R or a Ranger is going to be either the shim stack for how much that vehicle weighs or how that adjustability is being done. But the DNA is the same through everything. All of our shocks are aluminum body. All of our shocks have that IFP. All of them have a progressive setup. Some of them have spiral bore. Some of them have an internal bypass. So that goes through everything, whether it's utility style adventure riding or absolutely sending it through the desert or in the dunes with something bigger. So that just kind of goes across the whole spectrum.
Nice. Well, I think, you know, overall, like this shock, when I think about how it's tuned on a Polaris XPEDITION, right, is really nice in that ride zone, right, where it's kind of, you know, plush. You're not feeling like you're going to get beat up.
Correct.
Even if you adjust that, you know, for more weight, more passengers, it's still going to feel really nice. It's not going to beat you up throughout the day. And I think that, you know, that groove body or spiral groove goes a long way to getting there, right? Along with how the pistons and valves are set up.
Yep.
So I don't know, I think overall, you know, as far as giving people an intro to the Polaris XPEDITION, like, thanks for taking us through how, you know, kind of the inside of the shock works. That's it for this episode of Shop Talk. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and let us know what you want to see next time.